If flat front splits are on your goal list, then keep watching because today I'm going to share with you my 3 top secrets to help you reach touchdown. But first, please give this video the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so I can keep bringing you more valuable content just like this video. When someone first embarks on their flexibility journey, or just decides they want to be able to do the splits, the first thing that usually comes to mind is sitting in stretches for hours on end passively. Truthfully, this quickly gets boring, is ineffective, and only leads to injury, which leads me to secret number 1. Start strengthening. It might sound counterintuitive, but to achieve that flexibility of your dreams or just flatten those front splits, we need to achieve a careful balance of both strengthening and stretching. And no, I don't just mean running to the gym and performing the heaviest weighted squat you can, but performing specific conditioning and active flexibility drills to help you achieve those front splits. Why, I hear you ask? There are 3 main reasons why. Firstly, it helps prevent many common related flexibility injuries. Secondly, it helps calm your nervous system. When your nervous system detects any instability or lack of strength around a joint, it sends signals to the surrounding muscles of that joint to tense up and stop stretching deeper. It basically puts on the brakes and says, nah, I don't feel safe here. We're not going to stretch any deeper at all. This is what is known as your stretch reflex. And it's not a bad thing. It's putting on the brakes to stop you from injuring yourself. I'm sure you've all felt that feeling when you've gone into a stretch and then it all of a sudden just feels like you've hit a brick wall and you can't stretch any deeper. This is your stretch reflex kicking in. And for most students who are beginning their flexibility journey, most of their initial flexibility gains or flexibility progress is actually changes in that stretch reflex rather than the actual muscle length itself. So their nervous system has actually, or their stretch reflex has actually improved to allow them to go a little bit deeper. So when we are training for flexibility, we're not just training the physical flexibility or the length of the muscle, we're also training for an improved stretch reflex. This is one of my favorite sequences for splits conditioning, and it's going to focus on strengthening your butt, which is very important for the back leg of your split. For this, you're just going to need a yoga block. Don't stress if you don't have access to one. You can do this same sequence without, but we're going to start first up on all 4s. Now, it's very important that your shoulder is positioned directly on top of your wrist, hip directly on top of your knee. So you're literally like the perfect looking table. No wonky tables for this one. Then from there, I just want you to make sure you're not arched through your lower back and you're also not rounded. We want to maintain a nice neutral spine. And then from there, I'm going to straighten one of my legs out, nice and straight. From there, you're going to squeeze your booty, lift the leg up, and then lower back down to the floor. So I'm going to squeeze my booty, kick, and lower back down. Now, as you kick that leg up, ensure that you're not just arching your back to get that leg higher, because that's not me using my butt or my glute, that's me using my lower back to lift the leg, which we want to prevent. So remember, we need to try and tuck the tailbone under as we squeeze, lift, and lower back down. Just also watch that you're not unsquare, so don't open your hips out to the side. Keep both hips facing down to the floor as we squeeze, lift, and lower back down. I want you to aim for 10 with the straight leg. Then you go up to 10, you're going to move on and you're going to bend your foot. From here, I'm going to squeeze my booty as I kick up and lower back down. Also, just ensure that I'm not arching my back to lift the leg. I'm keeping my tailbone tucked under and really just focus on trying to feel this one through the booty. Now try and keep my ankle on top of my knee, not in towards my butt, not out too far away, on top of my knee. And I know it's not pretty, but I have got my foot flexed because I'm trying to kick to the roof through my heel. By doing so, you'll feel a little bit more booty activation. You're going to aim for 10 of these bent-legged donkey kicks. And then your last exercise for this sequence, you're going to grab a hold of a yoga block. And you're going to squeeze the yoga block between your underbum and your Achilles tendon. And this is going to target your hamstrings more so than your glutes. And from there, we're going to perform the same movement. So I'm going to kick up and lower back down. So again, this one should be targeting more the hamstrings. It's very important we keep these strong for our front splits as well to prevent any of those common hamstring injuries. And again, just aiming for 10, making sure you're not arching through your lower back and you're keeping both hips square to the floor. Secret number 2, fix your technique. Now, I'm sure this one sounds super obvious, but simply put, if you're not using correct technique, you're not going to see the changes that you desire. If you're not using correct technique, the muscle that you're actually targeting, so the muscle you're trying to stretch, most of the time is actually not going to be on stretch at all. And if that muscle's not correctly on stretch, then you're not going to see results in that muscle. So if you're one of those people who feel like you've been stretching for hours on end, for months on end, and you're still not seeing results, then it might be time to check in on your technique. And this is definitely not a point to just kind of brush over. You need to be picky with yourself and your technique and not be happy if you're not targeting that muscle correctly. And if you have trained with me before, you know how picky I am with technique. So today I wanted to break down 2 common front split stretches in detail and teach you how to reach that correct technique so that you can reach those flat front splits. We're going to take a look at a long lunge that targets your hip flexor, which is going to help you improve the back leg of your front split. And we're also going to take a look at a hamstring stretch, a half split stretch that's going to really help you with the front leg of your front split. Let's take a look at the long lunge exercise first. Your long lunge exercise is designed to stretch out those hip flexors. So for this exercise, I'm going to teach you how to do it correctly first. Now, as we enter into our long lunge position, we want to first try and tuck the tailbone under. So this is going to bring me into a neutral position with my pelvis and my spine. And I do this by thinking about engaging my core, so tucking my tummy in and squeezing that glute of my back leg, or specifically my underbutt. And then I've got to try and hold this tuck as I sneak forward into my long lunge position. Now, if I was to enter that lunge with an arch in my back, I'm actually not going to be stretching my hip flexors at all. In fact, I'm just going to be overcompensating and just kind of dumping everything through my lower back, which is going to cause me a lot of lower back pain and possibly injury in the future as well. And if I was to just keep sitting here, I'm not going to see changes in that hip flexor flexibility at all, which means I'm not going to create my nice flat split. So instead, it's important we come out of it, tuck the tailbone by squeezing our glutes, engaging the core, and holding that tuck as we sneak forward into the lunge. An arched lower back is actually a sign of tight hip flexors. So we're not going to arch the back, we're going to tuck our tailbone under. Next thing I want you to watch out for is that you don't lean forward over your leg. This is actually going to shorten your hip flexor and is not going to stretch it at all. Instead, we've got to try and hold that chest up nice and tall. So I'm always thinking about pulling my belly button away from my front leg. Your hip flexors do attach quite high up your spine. So again, if you lean forward, you're going to be shortening, you're not going to be stretching your hip flexor. It's also important that we don't just wing out to the side, because again, I'm not going to be stretching my hip flexor to its fullest potential. It's important that we square off our hips. So just imagine you've got a set of car headlights on your hips and we want it to face forwards. So I'm constantly pulling the hip of my back leg around to face forwards. From there, just keep an eye on your knee. I want you to try and keep your knee on top of your ankle, just so we don't create any injuries through that knee. And then again, just keeping tailbone tucked, chest up, nice and tall. And I'm not completely just sitting here, I am squeezing my glutes and activating through my core. Next exercise we're going to take a look at is your half split stretch. So this one targets your hamstring flexibility, which we need in the front leg of our front split. For this, I'm going to be using a broomstick. So if you do have a broomstick, I suggest go grab it, because it is going to really help you fix and clean up your technique in this stretch. Now for this exercise, I'm going to get you to straighten one leg out in front, and I'm just going to make sure my head is directly on top of my butt and my knee. So I got one straight line. From here, we're going to try and fold forward or hinge forward at the hips. So I'm going to fold forward. And as I hinge forward, I should feel the stretch through the back, through my hamstring, so through the back of that front leg. Now where this one commonly goes wrong is people don't quite hinge at the hips. We get a lot of rounding at the back, which isn't stretching my hamstring at all. In fact, it's just pulling on that lower back and causing quite a bit of pain through the lower back. So instead, we need to learn how to hinge correctly forward. So that's sticking the booty out and folding forward with a nice flat spine, not a rounded back. So a really good way to test this is to grab a hold of a broomstick or something similar and just placing it down your back. And I'm gonna make sure the stick stays attached to my head, middle of my back, and my butt throughout this entire movement. And it is not allowed to leave any of those 3 points. So keeping the stick attached, I'm gonna hinge forward. Now, if the stick leaves my butt, I know I rounded. So remember, stick has to stay attached to your butt the entire time as we hinge forward. So I really feel like I'm trying to stick my booty out towards the stick or towards the roof, and then try and come up from there. Try and keep your balance. So again, you're gonna hinge forward. It's like a bend and snap. And then I'm gonna squeeze and return back up. And then after a few reps of that, just see how you go holding that nice neutral spine as we hinge forward. You can even try placing your fingers just in your hips and trying to hinge forward over the hips. Again, think bend and snap. Try not to round forward. Secret number 3 is consistency. Again, this is a point that is often way overlooked, but is so important on anyone's flexibility or front split journey. Simply put, if you want a flat front split, you need to stay consistent. When a new student comes to me explaining that they've been trying to reach their front splits for months, but they're still not seeing any results, the first question I ask is, how often are you training? And more often than not, their answer is once every so often or whenever they feel like it. And if you want a flat front split, then just training whenever you feel like it is not going to cut it. You need to be making a daily effort towards that goal. And no, I don't mean stretching for a whole hour every single day, but instead just making a small daily effort that's going to help take you one step closer towards that goal. So again, it's not a 1 hour stretch session every single day. This could be simply making the effort to drink more water every day, because water is very important for flexibility. It could be just setting aside 15 minutes before you go to bed just to take a really light, non-intense stretch session that just kind of helps you undo any tightnesses from the day. Or if you're an office worker, it could just be making the effort to get up each hour and going for a walk, because sitting down for hours on end isn't good for flexibility either. And when it does come to your hour-long intense training sessions dedicated to your front splits, we need to be making a weekly effort towards these. So how often should you be training to get those front splits? How consistent do you need to be? Truthfully, there is actually no one size fits all. And for each of my one-on-one clients, I have a different schedule depending on their current level of fitness and flexibility and how quickly their body recovers. But as a general rule, you want to aim for about 1 to 2 sessions a week that are intense hour-long stretch sessions dedicated towards front splits. On your other days, I'd suggest doing a short 20 to 30 minute conditioning program dedicated to strengthening the areas that you need to strengthen for your front splits, and then just making sure you're getting in extra water, but also scheduling in a recovery day as well, because recovery is so important and really is so important for results. And if you're having trouble staying consistent, then let me share with you some of my favorite tips to help. Firstly, I'd suggest hiring a coach. Not only are they going to keep you consistent with your training or hold you accountable to your training session, but they can also check in with your technique as well and make sure you're not just doing the right exercises, but getting the most out of those exercises. You could, if you don't quite have the resources and time to pay for a coach, maybe you could find a friend who also has the same goal. You can both schedule in the same training session, because if you don't show up for your training and your friend does, your friend's going to be very disappointed in you. So it's a nice way to help hold each other consistent. I'd suggest making sure, well, I personally like to sit down every Sunday and schedule my training sessions in and treating it like a doctor's appointment and not saying no. So you could try scheduling in your diary, or even just put up a calendar on your fridge, and each time you complete one of your training sessions, tick it off. because boy, does it feel good to tick things off. I like to tick things off. Or maybe if you don't want to tick it off, you can get a little gold star and pop it on the sheet as well. And at the end of the month, you can sit down and review why you made good progress towards your front split and why you didn't. Let me know in the comments how these tips have helped you on your front split journey. Or if you have a future request for video, please leave that in the comments below as well. Don't forget to give this video the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so I can keep bringing you more valuable content just like this video. Happy stretching, friends!